Hello, my name is Oliver Pickard. Welcome to my workshop in beautiful Limousin, France. Now, usually when there's a milestone on this channel, I like to do a little bit of a Q&A video, and we are about a week away from 2,000 subscribers. But I thought I'd bump this video up because it is the festive season after all, and all of you are, well, many of you will be trying to avoid the Doctor Who Christmas special or whatever else is on TV, and so I thought I'd make this now rather than later. So I did the usual thing of asking you all on the social medias, of which there is a list down of my social media down in the description below, for your questions, and this is what you came up with. I'm going to limit it to just 12 so that this video isn't, 2 hours long, but 12 seemed to be apt for the time of year. So, Lawrence Chesterton says, soft springs and stiff shocks, or stiff springs and soft shocks? Neither. Both, kind of. Well, right. So, the way modern suspension works is the spring holds the car off the road and nothing else. And you'll often see it in grassroots racing. By the way, if you can hear mooing in the background, there is a cow about 2 fields away giving birth. Rural France things, right? So, if you watch grassroots motorsport, and there's a bunch of it on YouTube, but when a car goes around a corner, you'll often see the front end skitter. This is most apparent on front-wheel drive cars and also mid-engine cars. This is very bad and a sign that the car is massively oversprung. When you overspring a car, it means that it is not pushing into the floor, that it is basically skating along the top of the road rather than gripping into it. And this is very, very bad. Astonishingly, there are people who win races and set very fast times doing time attack with very bad suspension, and the reason is if your car is light enough, you can get away with really rubbish suspension, but it's not advisable and it's not very good, and cars go much faster when they are given the correct suspension. So you want your suspension as soft as possible, basically, within reason. So depending on the weight of your vehicle, you want the correct spring rates for that weight. And I know that people who do drifting, they like very hard setups. The reason is that slide is easier to initiate when you have harder suspension. But I assume we're talking grip and rally and stuff like that and fast road cars. So you want, like I say, you want an appropriate spring for the weight of your vehicle. There's a really good best motoring video actually, where they get an A86 owned by Tsuchiya, the Drift King. And if you don't know what best motoring is, it's a Japanese motoring program. And they put carbon fibre doors on the car, they put carbon fibre, I think they put a carbon fibre bonnet and boot on it, and then they put a carbon roof on it. It's really interesting. The car goes faster and faster and faster and faster, and then they put the carbon roof on, and the car actually goes slower. There's no more left in it. And the reason is that the spring rate is now too firm, because as you remove weight from the vehicle, obviously, you need to go with softer springs. So that video beautifully illustrates the importance of soft enough suspension. And all that your shock absorber does is control that wheel movement and prevent bounce. That's all it's there to do. And there is, on a coilover, on an expensive suspension system, there is adjustment, and that adjustment is usually rebound, which is how fast it returns. Obviously, too fast rebound causes bounce, and there is high speed compression and low speed compression. Now, high speed compression is usually referring to the small undulations in a road or track, and low speed compression is usually that big boof of kind of hitting a large bump or hitting a large undulation very, very fast that would use up all the suspension travel in one go. And obviously that's not a huge priority if you're building a track car, but it is a huge priority if you're building, say, a rally car. But there's also sag. Sag is the way you set your suspension up so that when you jack the car up, there is drop in the suspension. Americans call it droop. Droop or sag is massively important, because if you're going to be driving on roads where there are dips, So like potholes and stuff like that, the wheel will drop in rather than the car dropping in if you have enough sag. It's also important when you have a nice soft suspension setup, when you chuck a car into an apex, the outside tyre that doesn't have weight on it will stay on the road rather than tripoding. So yeah, you want as soft as you can get away with within reason. And obviously that's very difficult because the weight of a car is dynamic, and if it's a family car, you need it to handle a full bag of shopping, full boot full of shopping, and 4 kids and your partner and a full tank of fuel and all of that. And if it's a sports car, it has to handle a lot less. But I know that you have a Lotus Europa, Lawrence, so your suspension system is very well designed, and it is designed to be nice and soft and well riding as well. And the lighter your car is, the better it is, or the easier it is to set up your suspension, because the less effect the car's weight has on your suspension. To put that into perspective, my 2CV has just 125 kilos pressing down on each tyre. So, there are people way more than that. Right, what is the most... no, not that one yet. Sensational Power Flip says, excuse me, imagine the 2CV was never invented. What would be the runner-up? That's a really difficult one. Okay, I really like A35s, Austin A30s and Austin A35s. Out of the 100 and so cars my parents have owned, my favourite one as a young child was our Austin A30. And it used to do power slides at 15 miles an hour, and it was utterly superb. It was really comfy, and it had bags and bags of character, and it is one of the reasons I love older, lightweight, cute cars so much. Like, that car was everything. It was superb, and I still regret not having it to this day, because I absolutely adored it. Although the boot in an A35 is too small, so I would have to get an A35 van, like the van that was in Wallace and Gromit, Curse of the Were-Rabbit, which is a film that will be on this Christmas. But I also like Austin 7s. I also like Morris Minor Travelers. Austin 7s don't get anywhere near the love that they deserve. They are fantastic cars. And without the Austin 7, we wouldn't, of course, have Jaguar. We wouldn't have Lotus, BMW. Even Datsun were heavily inspired by the Austin 7. So yeah, it's a massively influential car, and they are utterly brilliant daily drivers. But I would need a small estate or a small van, because the amount of stuff that I can and regularly do fit in my 2CV is utterly astounding. And it is a superb all-season car. I love driving my 2CV in really bad weather, because it has this fantastic heater. And I can drive in minus 10 in a t-shirt and be snuggly and warm in there. It's lovely. It's like being sat on your sofa on a winter's day and watching it snow outside. It's like that, but you're driving. It's superb. And in summer, I take the roof back and enjoy it as a superb summer car. So I would struggle to find another car that would take that place. Jolene is one of the best things I have ever bought in my life. It's one of the best things I've ever spent money on. And that car has never let me down. And I'm massively, massively proud to own it. I also like things like Rolls-Royce 2025s, which is a pre-war Rolls-Royce, the baby Rolls of its day, and they're superb. And at some point, I'll have to buy one. But it's tempting to say things like, a Model A van or something like that, but I think that's a bit too agricultural to use every single day, and wouldn't have the heater and stuff that I'd like. Another one from Lawrence Chesterton. What's the most ideal material and shape for a gear knob? Ooh, it depends on the pattern, and it depends on the sort of shifter, and it depends on how big your hands are. I've got very big hands, so I like a big gear knob, but I don't like weighted gear knobs. I'm unusual that way. I like snickety light gear shifts, and like I say, having a bigger hand. I prefer a big gear knob. If you've got small hands, you'll prefer a small gear knob. I don't like metal gear knobs because they're cold. And I like a very smooth gear knob, so leather doesn't always suit me either. I prefer kind of wood or even plastic. the painted gear knob in Jolene. I've done some experimenting with that, with kind of rubberized coatings and paint and stuff. And the nicest thing that I found was actually the paint that I use on the wheels, but I polished it up, and that was absolutely lovely. Although at some point I will make a nice wooden gear knob for that car, and I'll make a video about it when I do. So yeah, if it was a floppy paddle car, I know that there are loads of companies now making paddles for DSG type transmissions and all that kind of stuff. It would have to be something that was very tactile. And I don't think rubberized coat, like a rubberized one, I wouldn't like that. I don't know what I would want with that. That's a tough one, and it would be one of my deciding points on having that kind of car. I don't think there's anything wrong with DSG transmissions, the kind of double clutch flappy paddle ones. In theory, I don't think there's anything really wrong with it. It's just like the old pre-war pre-selector transmissions. But I would have to have a shifter that was very nice and tactile and nice to use. Adam McLeod says, can you tell us one thing you love and one thing you love less about having subscribers, fans / followers? Thank you. You're welcome, Adam. Right. I love hearing from you all. It's my favourite thing about having subscribers and fans and followers. I don't like the word followers. It makes me sound like Jesus. But I love hearing all of your stories, and I love hearing about your relationships with your cars. And that's why I created the Facebook group, because people used to email me these beautifully written, really long emails full of awesome photos about, their parents' cars and the fact that their parents had passed their cars down to them and all these wonderful things. And it made me sad that I couldn't share these articles that these wonderful people were writing for me and taking the time out to write to me. And so I created the Facebook group so I could share it with everybody. And I love hearing all of that, and I love how cars can impact people's lives. And I love design. I love be it clothing, be it watches, be it furniture, be it architecture, be it automotive. Motorcycles, whatever. I adore design. It's an obsession of mine. And not everybody gets to own a great piece of architecture, but we all get to own a great piece of car design. We all have that opportunity, be it a Mini, be it a 2CV, be it whatever, be it a Lamborghini Miura. We all have an aspirational piece of design, and we all have a piece of design that we own and love owning. And I love hearing about those stories, and I love hearing about people's motivations, and I love different opinions, and I love different perspectives on the world, and that's something that I love. Something that I love less, it's not so much a thing of having followers, but when it comes to car shows and stuff like that, I find it's taken me a while to get a balance between spending time making videos and talking to people at car shows. I love talking to people at car shows. One of my highlights of Retromobile in Paris was going around and talking to all the clubs, and I met a couple of people who weren't very nice actually there, but I also met some of the nicest car enthusiasts I'd ever met. And actually I met a couple of car clubs who kind of made me want, and I actually made a video about car clubs when I got back because of this, because I met some people from some car clubs that actually made me want those cars when before I wasn't really that bothered with them. People like the Facel Vega Club, the French Morgan Club, and the Spridget, the Austin Healey Sprite MG Midget Club were awesome people, amongst many others. The Amilcar Club were awesome. I already wanted an Amilcar, but when I met the club and they were so nice to me, it really made me want one. But finding that balance between talking to people and filming videos is something that I think I'm still trying to get better at. Dennis Martin Ferez, who's been on this channel. Dennis has been in one of my videos. I interviewed him at the French National 2CV show. He's a French Californian, who has one of the oldest 2CVs in America. So I'll leave a link to that video there or wherever. Dennis says, okay, Oliver, what is the best way to clean your gas tank on my original best way to clean my gas tank on my original 2CV, 1954. It's not in bad shape, but has that smell of varnish from sitting too long. Thank you. You're welcome, Dennis. Now then, I know that you have a plastic tank fitted, and in my opinion, I would keep your plastic tank fitted because I know that your car doesn't have a fuel gauge, and I know that a plastic 2CV tank was actually originally designed for the 2CV6, and so it is a 25 litre tank and not a 20 litre tank. So you can actually carry more fuel with your plastic tank. Oh, sparrows. Hello, sparrows. My advice would be keep the plastic tank. Modern fuel, especially nasty California fuel, doesn't like steel fuel tanks. And so there are companies out there that do special coatings and stuff like that. And if you really must keep your steel tank, your original steel tank, I'm not saying throw it away, but if you want to put it back in the car, my advice would be to contact one of those companies and get a fancy steel, coated tank. I've only heard of people doing it and I heard very good things. I've never done it myself though. Next question from Dan Rorath, who's also a member of the Facebook group. Are you going to make the panel between the seat and the engine in Pandora removable for maintenance on the engine? Right, the Firewall, as you can tell, is a rather complicated steel ladder structure with steel sheeting originally. Now, I will be keeping, obviously I've made the centre tunnel already, I will be keeping this bit, this triangulated section, but it will be made bigger as the later cars were in Pandora, but this bit itself can't be removable. I need to have an engine intrusion bar in case of an accident so that the engine doesn't end up in the passenger seat, and I need to have fire protection and stuff like that, so I have to be very careful when it comes to the Firewall. I have a plan for a cool Firewall that I will discuss in time, but it can't be removable, unfortunately, although all the stuff that I need to access on the engine, as luck would have it, the thermostat and stuff like that, can be accessed through this panel here. It all lines up, so that's beautiful. So actually I don't need to, all I need is this removable panel, although there will have to be some other removable panels in wheel wells and the boot and stuff, because I have to get to things like the timing chain tensioner, which is on the side of the engine, about there, right near where the roll bar is. Gavin Merton says, how do you find enough time to fit everything in between the barn, the workshop and the cars? I'm exhausted just watching. Okay, I'm obsessive in life in general. I'm incredibly motivated, I'm incredibly driven, and I'm an incredibly obsessive person. And this is what I love to do. I don't do this stuff because I'm making videos. I do this stuff because it's what I love to do, and I'm making videos. Does that make sense? I don't do it for content. I'd be doing this whether I was on camera or not. And this was one of the things that made me start a YouTube channel, because people were like, you do so much and you're so busy and like you should be recording this because you're crazy. But this is, like I said, this is what I love to do, and I'm incredibly obsessive. I'm an incredibly singularly driven person. I'm very, very focused, and I'm very messy, and I'm very, like, nothing else matters in my life than the thing I am doing. But I have this thing where I think about 9 things at once, and I obsess on those things and nothing else, and I drive everyone in my life crazy. And the only way for me to stay sane is to do things and to do stuff and to make things and stuff. I'm very driven in that manner. It's just in me to make stuff. And I'm the son of a aerospace engineer and tool maker, and the son of an artist. And so I am just creatively driven, and finding time for me isn't really a problem, because I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot. I love music. and I love media. So I love photography, and I love cars, and I love architecture and stuff. So if I'm on the internet, I'm looking at that stuff, but I'm looking at it through the lens of feed me inspiration. You know, I'm like Johnny Five, input. You know, that's me, and I have this kind of what do you call it? Photographic memory, and so I'm so driven to do stuff, and it's just the way I'm built. And I would be doing this even if I wasn't on camera. You know, I love creating, and I love making, and it's just in me. And I can sit there and I can design 400 things in a row and not get bored. It's just who I am. In fact, I've designed Pandora visually 5 different ways now. And it's just the way I am. So finding time for me isn't difficult. Also, being in rural France, it's not like there's a bunch of distraction. But also, when I need to get away from it all, when I need to have some space and just go out on my bike and just be, it's the perfect place for that. And that's one of the reasons why, some of you may know, I used to make cycling videos a long time ago. One of the reasons why I stopped making cycling videos is so that I could have that peace and tranquility when I went for a ride, and just enjoy being in like neutral mode with my brain, and focus on my breathing and my heart rate and my cadence, and just be in the moment, because that's one of my favorite things, just being in the moment. And that's something that I find difficult with some social media like Instagram and stuff like that. I find it difficult taking photos of things, because I like to be in the moment. And sharing that moment can sometimes be, I don't know, I have to remind myself to share the moment. And that's why videos like this that are an episode like appeal to me more than, say, vlogging does, because I couldn't be a vlogger because I can't be interesting every single day. You need your space, you need that time when you just put your feet up and you're wearing I always wear a ripped pair of jeans, but you're wearing a ripped pair of jeans and a comfy t-shirt, and you've got messy hair, and you just be, or you're out on the road pedaling and you just be in that moment, or you go for a drive and you just be. We all need that space. And if I did vlogs, then you don't get that space, and I think that's not healthy. John Molloy says, John Molloy says, I'm not good with the names. Oliver, apologies for another basic question. Do you use SP95E10 fuel? Okay. My recommendation for all classic cars is always use premium fuel. It's not about an octane number. Octane is the amount of, or the RON, that's the amount of pressure fuel can be put under before it combusts on by itself. So like, that stops things like pre-detonation, which is the fuel going off before the piston gets to the top, which is super bad. It's not about that, because obviously my 2CV Jolene has 7-to-1 compression. It's about the way that the fuel is mixed and the other components in the fuel. And what I've discovered over years, and I'm the only person who said this, but many people have found out that if you use premium fuel, you tend to use less of it, because you literally get more bang per stroke, and it burns a lot cleaner. Because it burns a lot cleaner, you don't put so much stress on your engine. You're not pushing your engine quite as hard. And so you tend to get better fuel economy, you tend to get better life out of your engine, and you tend to get smoother running. So it's not really about the ethanol for me, as much as it is about, obviously if you have non-ethanol safe fuel hoses and stuff like that, you should have ethanol safe fuel hoses at this point. But to me, it's about just getting good fuel economy and having smooth engine running and not having problems. Modern fuel isn't the same as old fuel was, no matter what the mix, and it does burn a lot hotter. And that's one of the reasons why classic cars tend to overheat, because literally the combustion cycle generates more heat than it used to. So I tend to find that, or from what I've read, the combustion cycle of premium fuels is a lot cooler than the combustion cycle, and a lot cleaner burn than the combustion cycle of lesser quality fuel. So always use the best stuff you can. You know, you feed your body the best food you can, hopefully, in order to be as healthy as possible, and give your car the best lubricants and the best fuel you can, because at the end of the day, it's not worth not doing. Just like oil, if your car sits for any length of time, all the zinc and all the protective stuff that's in your oil all sinks to the bottom of your oil pan. So when you first start your car, until that oil gets really whisked up, and there's no guarantee that it actually will get fully whisked up, all those metals that are in the oil to protect, like zinc, to protect your engine, or your protectants, are all in the bottom of your sump. And so if your car's been sitting for any length of time, even if that oil is still good, it's a really good idea to drain that oil and to do an oil change. And I know that a lot of people who do track days don't do that. And if you change your oil regularly with any sort of car, that whether it be a classic car or a track day car that does a lot of work as well, it's very much worth doing regular oil changes with really good high quality oil. Mark Rabidden says, excellent video. Again, all very good things to know about, even if you don't have a dynamo. One question you may have been asked before is, why haven't I painted the headlight backs on Jolene? Is it simply because you like the patina, or patina, depending on where you're from and how you speak? The patina on Jolene's headlights has a story to it. When I first bought Jolene, my 2CV, it had 2CV6 headlights. And I did a video where actually I hybridized my headlights, because my neighbour happened to have on his tractor a set of Citroen H-van headlights that had been gotten out of a scrapyard. And the reflectors on them were totally dead. But I used the lenses and headlight buckets from the H-van headlights of my neighbour's tractor with the 2CV6 reflector unit to create a hybrid headlight that is super bright and really, really nice. And the H-van headlight and the 6-volt 2CV headlight are an identical unit, except for the fact that H-vans were often painted silver and 2CVs weren't. And if I paint Jolene's headlight buckets, they just look like original factory headlight buckets. And that kind of, to me, removes a bit of the story. And the fact that you're asking me about it now just proves to me that it was worth not painting them. Because it's nice sometimes to just preserve a little bit of history. Because my car, Jolene, came to me with no real history other than she was gotten out of a barn in Clermont-Ferrand, which is where the Michelin factory is. And that's it. The last owner didn't drive her, and I've driven her all over the place, and I've made loads of friends, and she's become, a symbol of this YouTube channel. In fact, last year I went to a car show to film at the car show, not to show my car. I hadn't even washed Jolene in probably longer than I should have. And they parked Jolene. They asked me if I could park Jolene front and centre in the entrance of the car show. And I was really embarrassed because the wheels were filthy and the windows were dirty. But yeah, she's a symbol of the YouTube channel now, and I like that. And I like that I've given a car that had no history. Because I'm a big believer in the history of a car is more than just it leaving the factory. Anthony Gerard says, what are you going to do for an engine subframe? All speed or build one yourself? And how about the gear changes as well? Okay, first things first, the rear subframe. There's a bunch of companies that do subframes to put engines in the back of Minis. I've looked at a lot of them. Most of them I wouldn't touch with a 10-foot ball because they break a load of the rules of roll cages, space frame chassis, and subframes. So when you make a subframe, roll cage, chassis, all that jazz, there's three main rules. One is that you never use a tube or a piece of metal in bending. In other words, when you have a sheet like that, you never put a sheet dead onto it like that because it will bend this sheet, and that's a very weak joint. It's not strong. The same with a tube. You never put a tube to the middle of another tube. Another thing is, if you have a bend, you should always put a tube to the center of that bend. It keeps it strong. And you never have tubes that just go to nowhere. There are some high quality mid-engine subframes out there, but they all locate the engine further back than I want to put it, because I want my engine right smack bang here so that I can get my wheelbase right. And the front subframes, I would have to fabricate so much stuff that by the time I'd done it, it isn't worth doing anymore. So I'm not going to use anybody else's subframe, I'm going to make my own. And the gear linkage is a cable gear linkage on a K-series engine, and the shifter just happens to be right in the back here, just behind this firewall. So the cable length is almost the same as if it was in the front of the car. And of course, a cable doesn't care whether it's going backwards or forwards. There's two cables, but they're not bothered which way they go. It's a metal string, and as long as it's running a reasonably linear path without kinking, it doesn't care. Paul Campbell Music says, question: where do you get your ignition condensers from? The modern ones are shocking quality to the point of being dangerous. I had a genuine Bosch one fail after 1,500 kilometers on the Autobahn last summer. Assuming you haven't gone over to electronic ignition, of course. Okay, so if you, any classic car, not just 2CVs, but condensers are like bulbs, right? If you have 6-volt bulbs, or you have a condenser in your car, my advice is new old stock. Go online or go to an auto jumble and find new old stock stuff. My old bulbs in my 2CV, they were reproduction ones, and the element inside the bulb actually bent over like this, and I've even seen them explode. I went out and I found a set of 1960s new old stock yellow Philips bulbs, and they are utterly incredible, and they give the same amount of light as a 12-volt 2CV6 headlight does. So my advice with condensers would be that to find new old stock condensers if you have to keep them. But if you are at a point where you can actually afford, or if you are able to legally fit electronic ignition to your car, my advice is use Lumination, use 123 or one of the really high quality electronic ignitions out there, because they afford smoother running, better combustion of fuel, and they produce more power and better fuel economy. So your engine will last longer and it will make more power, which means that you don't need to put your foot down as much, which means it will actually pay for itself in saved fuel eventually. Not only that, you don't have to touch it. There are people, it's not newfangled technology, this is technology that has been around for over 40 years, electronic ignition. It's not new stuff, and there are people with 123 ignitions and illumination systems that have had theirs for over 25 years, and they are still going strong without being touched. And people even take them off one car and put them on the next car with absolutely zero problems. In fact, there's an electronic ignition called a 123 Duo, and it does 6-volt and 12-volt. So in theory, you can put it on a 6-volt car. It has settings on it. It even has an ethanol setting, right? And you can set it for your 6-volt car. And if you sell your 6-volt car, you can take it off, put it on a new car. If you've got a 12-volt car or an AMI 6 or an AMI 8, you could put it on that, set it up for that, and it would run that car. So you can even take your electronic ignition system with you. They are, in my opinion, a worthwhile investment. And there is a reason that they are completely legal in most historic racing. The reason for that it being they are more reliable and they are just better in every single way. And if you have so much free time that you need a point to fiddle with, my advice is that you buy another project car and that you don't fiddle with your point, you just fit electronic ignition or go and fix something else. Because because the less things to go wrong, the better. Or drive your car more. That's good as well. But yeah, my personal opinion is that electronic ignitions, where they are legal and available, are far superior to old-fashioned points and condensers. And it's a scientific fact that they are superior. So if you don't want to mess about, and if you're at the point where you are changing points and condensers, just get an electronic ignition system, in my opinion. And there are many high quality units available. My advice being, buy high quality, buy one that is made in America or in Europe, depending on where your car is from and what's available to you. But buy a really high quality unit that's going to last, because we want to, you tend not to buy many electronic ignition systems. You buy it once and it's done. And so the people who make these units are trading on their quality, not their quantity. And so you want to invest in a really good high quality unit, but you want to give your money to people who are keeping classic cars alive. Don't get one off, whatever, wish.com or something. Right, Dell UK. It says, I'll be the first to say well done, but will also be the first to ask about the relationship between the first roll bar in Pandora and the back window. Inside the shell, fine, but if, as shown, any idea of using a copy of the original goes out the window. I think the original was polycarbonate. Okay, so as you can see on Pandora, the back window is curved, and it curves outwards. It's kind of this shape, right? And when you're sat in the driver's seat, you can't see through that bit. That bit of the window does basically nothing. And it is the curve here is a famous point of not sealing on these cars. And so I thought, well, I need to move my roll bar, and I'd much rather get rid of a leak and live in the event of a slight incident than have a bit of curved windscreen that I can't see out of anyway. So, yes, my rear window will be changing shape slightly, but the size of the thing that you can actually see out of will be the exact same size. That's it, really. The roll bar does go through the window, yes, and there will be a change in shape, but it doesn't affect the body line, and it doesn't affect the functionality of the car. And so I think it's a fair trade-off, is that? Especially seeing as how it gets rid of a known leaking spot, because the last thing you want is water on your floor and stuff like that inside your car. As a 2CV owner, I know all too much about leaking cars. Although Jolene doesn't leak. So, yes, the rear window will change shape slightly, but the bit that you look out of stays the same size. And it also allows me to fit a glass rear window, because one of the things that I don't like about mid-engine Minis and also mid-engine Renault 5s and also V6 Clios as well, is that when you're in a monocoque hatchback with a mid-engine, you're in the same room as the noise. You're in the same room as the engine, even though it has a box around it. You're still contained in that same bubble. And the bonus of a Cox GTM over a mid-engine Mini, on top of aerodynamics, on top of lighter weight and all those things, is although you do need to take care of spring rates and stuff, as previously talked about, is the fact that you are in a different room to the engine than a normal mid-engine Mini. And so I really want to use sound insulation, and I really want to insulate myself from the engine's noise, especially considering that the intake is right next to my right ear. As I'm sat in this seat, the intake is right here. And so I'm going to need some sound insulation. I'm going to need some separation from that noise, because you want the good noises. You don't want, deafening cacophony as you're driving around down the motorway. You don't want right in your ear. I get that with Jolene, and that's one of the reasons for having Pandora. That Jolene doesn't really like being on motorways, although she will happily toot along at 90 kilometers an hour. If I'm going a really, really long way, I want to be doing more than 56 miles an hour. And so this is, Pandora is the solution to that. And she's the most, efficient, I won't say that, but she's the most efficient solution that I can come up with for travelling really, really long distances. And she, obviously you've seen, because of the engine being moved forward, my boot actually gets bigger than it would be with a mini engine, not smaller. So yeah, I have room for, 2 soft bags or 3 soft bags, depending on how I route the exhaust and all of that. So I'm really, really happy with it. And the engine changing and the firewall changing slightly isn't a big problem for me. It's more a thing of being comfortable and having the insulation and all of that. So yeah. Thank you all for watching. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down in the comment section below. Happy holidays, everybody. Even if you don't celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah or any of that, even if you're not a person who is religious in any way, shape or form, I hope that we can at least celebrate the end of 2020 for the good things that it's brought, because it has brought some good things, and for all the bad things that it's brought. And we can all look forward to next year. We can all kind of cross our fingers and hope to goodness that things get better, and we can all work towards that at least. So thank you all for watching. Please be awesome to each other, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye. Oh, by the way, if you want to join the Facebook group or any of that, that's all down in the description. And please subscribe. Please, if you want to get me anything for Christmas, hit the subscribe button and click like, because that really, really does help. So thank you all for watching. Bye.